Leave it all behind. Leave it all behind. Leave it all behind. Leave it all behind. I have what you need, but you keep on searching. I've done all the work, but you keep on working. When you're running on empty and you can't find the remedy, just come to the well. You can spend your whole life chasing what's missing, but that empty inside, it just ain't gonna listen. When nothing can satisfy and this world leaves you high and dry, but just come to the well. 'Cause all who thirst will thirst no more, and all who search will find what their souls long for. The world will try, it can never fail, so leave it all behind and come to the well. So bring me your heart, no matter how broken. Just come as you are. When your last prayer is spoken, just rest in my arms a while. You'll feel the change, my child, when you come to the well. Yeah. And all who thirst will thirst no more, and all who search will find what their souls long for. The world will try, it can never fail, so leave it all behind and come to the well. Yeah. Leave it all behind. The world will try, it can never fail, so leave it all behind. And now that you're full of love beyond measure, your joy's gonna flow like a stream in the desert. Soon all the world will see living water is found in me, 'cause you've come to the well. And all who thirst will thirst no more, and all who search will find what their souls long for. This world will try, it can never fail, so leave it all behind and come to the well. Leave it all behind. 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 Just leave it all behind and come to the well.
Father God, Lord, as we come before you again, Lord, we remember that those that would love to be here and can't because they're ill, bless them. Bless those that have buried loved ones, those that are looking at surgery, those that have received unbelievable news. We pray your grace on all these situations. And now, Lord, may your grace enable your word to come alive in our minds, and may we exchange the lie of our fleshly mind for the truth of your mind. We pray in Jesus' name. If you pray with me, church, say amen this morning. A couple of years ago, one of our esteemed politicians came out with a movie called An Inconvenient Truth. And very inconveniently, most of what he said in that movie was not true. That's that. You got to hate that when you are trying to shock the world into an awareness of this thing. And we were ruining the planet with all our carbon emissions, and he made the mistake of making some dire predictions. And what's horrible is, when you're going to melt the polar ice cap and with all of your SUVs and it ends up growing, don't you hate that? Just hate when it does that. And this year, like every year, the polar ice cap was 70 feet thick. And they sent a team last winter to study the effects of global warming, only to not be able to go because it was too cold. I call that an inconvenient truth, don't you? Well, last week, as we began the study of Philippians, the second chapter, Paul said that we are to have a different mind. We are to have the mind of Christ, because the mind that we were born with, it was broken. In fact, it was so broken it was not working right. It was crazy. And what's the craziest thing about our mind is that we think that we're the center of our life, that we're the center of the universe. And that's what puts us in the crazy ward, because God said He alone is the center of everything, that He alone holds together everything that this world is. And for man to put himself where God is, that's the ultimate craziness, right? And so here we are, we're all in the psych ward, we all recognize that, and when did things go bad? Things went bad, and we went to the visual arts department this week, and we got a chair. Say, where is that located? It's the whole building. We just use whatever we can. This chair represents the throne of God. It's God's rightful place, and on Wednesday night, Jack read in Isaiah talking about the throne room of heaven and how that these seraphim, they fly around the throne of heaven constantly with two wings covering their eyes because He's too holy to behold. Two wings covering their feet and the other set of wings flying, crying out, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. That is happening in heaven's throne room immediately, constantly, and forever. Right now, it's happening in heaven. So in heaven, all the angelic hosts, all the Old Testament saints, they know that the only rightful person to sit on this throne is God. They know, but see, we're not there yet. We have a different set of circumstances going on. Now, what's our circumstances? Our circumstances in the garden. Remember what the serpent said. The serpent came to Adam and Eve and said, listen, I know you got a wonderful life, but God's keeping you down. And here's a better deal. The better deal is, why don't you become like God? Why don't you eat the fruit that He said not to eat, and you can be like God, knowing good and evil. Exactly what God didn't want us doing was getting on this chair. That's when things went south, right? When man put himself on the throne that only God deserved to sit on. So let me get this straight. Here's the story. Adam aspired to be God. And what did God do? Well, it says in Philippians, the second chapter, that God, even though He was equal with God, did not consider the equality of God as something to be used for His own advantage. Here's verse 7. Instead, He emptied Himself by assuming the form of a slave. That emptying of Himself, while man was aspiring to be like God, God was voluntarily laying down His rights. Oh, that's un-American. Man, I mean, no, wait a second. I have certain rights that are unalienable. I am not going to set those rights down. It's unpatriotic, it's un-American, it's unchristian to lay down my rights. I know my rights. I know what the truth is. My wife, my spouse, my kid, they're wrong. I'm standing on the truth. Boy, how many times you heard that in your house? I hear that in my house on a weekly basis. Well, it typically doesn't come out of my wife's mouth or my mouth. It just right up here between my ears. I'm going to stand on what's right. Well, if God did what was right, he'd have stayed on his throne. He'd have never left heaven to come to this earth. He'd have never emptied himself of his rights and his glory and his majesty and become like us. Yuck. That theology is known as kenosis. That's the Greek word. The self-emptying of God. Wouldn't you like it if we just had a little check valve and when we got really full of ourselves, we could just like lift the valve and shh, and all that bad stuff would just go out? I'd love to have a check valve like that, wouldn't I? The only problem is I'd never let you touch it. Because your opinion on when I'm being full of myself and my opinion on when I'm being full of myself are two different opinions, aren't they? I'd have that check valve, it'd get rusty, I'd never use it. Now, Adam tried to be like God, but God condescended himself to be like man. He emptied himself of his right as God, and he became like a slave. Wow. Now, the biggest lie that the flesh tells us, once we recognize, okay, my mind isn't working the way it should be, I have no desire in that throw, we recognize we're in crazy town. We're in the psych ward. Why don't we just leave? Why don't we just get up and go? You know, open the door, sneak past the guards, and just leave. Well, we do this all the time, don't we? It's the lie of what is known as behavior modification. That is what the flesh sells us. When we start recognizing, wait, my mind's not working like it should, the flesh kicks in gear and it says, yeah, you know what? You need to change a couple things. We need to start over. We need to wipe the slate clean. Who hasn't said that? My diet starts tomorrow, right? And this behavior modification was brought really into clear view with one of my favorite actors. One of my favorite actors, I don't know him personally, have no idea what his life is like, but boy, in the movies, he's hilarious. That's Jim Carrey. And he just got, his face I just totally resonate with. And one of his classics was the movie Dumb and Dumber. He was in that movie, and I didn't time this. I didn't know that there was a sequel coming out, but I found out there's a sequel coming out. I'm not advertising the sequel. I just remember in the original movie, and it was Jim Carrey, and the other was Jeff Daniels, a native Michigander. And they played these two brothers that had an IQ in the single digits. And hairstyles from 40 years ago, that bull hairstyle. I mean, Jim Carrey, I don't know how they do that in the special effects, but he had about a half-inch gap in his teeth. And they were just as dumb as rocks. They really, literally were. And they played it to a T. Well, they stumbled onto a suitcase full of money. And so that it was just a hilarious movie of them. This money put them in environments that they didn't normally belong into, with these wealthy people in a ski resort town in Colorado, and they're hanging out with supermodels. So Jim Carrey, one of the brothers, he falls in love. I mean, he falls hard for the supermodel, and because of all the money, they're getting to be around them, and he just got this crush, and she's getting uncomfortable because he's just, hanging on her every word and being all buck-toothy and everything, and she's just gorgeous. But she's in that awkward position where she cares enough, she sees the guy's heart, and she doesn't want to hurt him, and so they come down to it, and he just lays it out there. He's like, man, I like you. I want you to be my girlfriend. She's like, yeah, that's been very apparent, but, I mean, she doesn't tell him, you absolutely repulse me. That's what everybody was thinking, right? That was the truth. It was repulsive to her to think about being with this guy. But she doesn't say that. She goes, but I'm just, I just don't think it'd work and this and that, and I'm not interested. And she was being very kind to him, and he was being very persistent. And so he says, well, man, can you put it into numbers? I mean, do I have any chance at all? Just give me a number. And so instead of saying, no, there's no chance, do you not get it? She didn't do that. She goes, okay, 1 in a million. And it just hits him like a tidal wave. So you're saying there's a chance, right? Remember that moment? And everybody groaned. I mean, we laughed and groaned because he wasn't getting it. It's like, no, she was just being kind. You don't have a chance in a million. But we keep falling for it, just like Jim Carrey. The flesh dangles that carrot that says, here, Tom, you can change this. You can get back on that throne if you just do some modification of your behavior. Everything's going to be fine. And I keep falling for it. There's a chance that I can do something. I can do something. And Jesus explains why this has never worked. He explains it in John, the 8th chapter. As he was saying these things, many believed in him. So Jesus said, look at this, to the Jews who had believed him. These are people that were walking away from Judaism and listening to this new teacher. And their families were saying, you're crazy. What are you doing? He's a kook. But they're like, no, I've seen his miracles. I've seen this. I mean, you got to hear this guy. So he says to them, the ones that have made these tough decisions, if you continue in my word, you really are my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Who doesn't know that verse? Who hasn't heard that verse from some politician in Washington, right? These are the same people that tell us, we know how to do your life. The craziest people in America are in Washington, D.C. They think things like, we're going to spend our way into financial security. How exactly does that work? We're going to spend money we don't have to get money we didn't earn. It doesn't make sense. It does to them. And if you argue with them about that, they'll say, you're crazy. What do they tell you all the time? This is too complicated for you. You don't know. They know better. They know what better with your health care. They know better with your retirement. They know better with everything. Yet I keep driving down roads that make me feel like my truck is going to fall apart because they know so much. But they can't build a decent road with all that money they take from us. But they continue to say, so there's a chance. Right? They're going to find that needle in the haystack and fix everything one of these days. And we spiritually are like that. Jesus, every politician has used this verse. You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Send me to Washington, I'm going to tell the truth. Oh, everybody knows this verse. This verse is no secret to anybody in this room. But what comes after the verse is not going to be read by a politician. They continued to say, here's their response to Jesus saying, I'm here to set you free with my truth. They said, well, we're descendants of Abraham. They answered him, we have never been enslaved to anyone. How dare you say, you will become free? We're not slaves. We're not slaves. We're free. How can you tell us you're going to set us free when we're already free? I know Rome's in control, but they don't have our hearts. We're free. And Jesus responded, I assure you, he's so kind. Everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. Oh. Wow. See, here's what Americans, and a lot of times American Christians, think freedom is. Getting to do what I feel. When I get to do what I feel like, then I'm free, right? I mean, that's so American, isn't it? Yeah, when we get to do what we want, that's the ultimate freedom. Is that really free? Because he said, Well, any man who sins is a slave to sin. And we're all sinners, so we're not free. I don't care if we're doing, for 50 years, America's been doing what it feels like. Is it getting better? Is it safer? Is it freer? Are our families in better shape? Are our communities? We've been doing what we feel like. Are our communities more tightly knit together? We fixed the hate thing, right? We fixed the racism thing, right? We fixed the social class warfare thing, right? None of us in here hate rich people. None of you. Those are the people down the street in the other Baptist church. They hate the rich people. Oh, they are the rich people. Oh, sorry. See? Well, it hasn't worked. See, what freedom is not doing what I feel. You know what freedom is? Freedom is doing right and loving it. Did you hear that? Doing what's right and loving every minute of it. I haven't had a Cheez-It in a long time. And yesterday at the grocery store, I pouted about it. Went to the grocery store. I started walking down the aisle, and Cindy said, "Don't go down that aisle. I just want to look at them. I just want to look." "Oh, don't go down that aisle. Let's get other stuff." See, because I haven't had Cheez-Its, so that means I'm free, right? I'm in charge. I'm on the throne. I haven't eaten a Cheez-It. I can't tell you when the last Cheez-It. Even though those of you that love me, you still send me pictures of it. Shame on you. Shame on you. So for those of you that don't know about Cheez-Its, that's my sin example. Get your own box. Because I love Cheez-Its. I know they're not good for me. I love them. I haven't had any. So you're like, so I'm free, right? I haven't loved not having them. I'm not there yet. But I haven't had them. So when sin, if you got some sin in your life that's secret right now, and it is taking up the landscape of your life, what do you mean? Well, in your mind, you're manipulating circumstances and things so that you can keep that sin hidden, but keep it going. You're not free. You're a slave. You're an absolute, locked in a crazy room slave to that. Now, the reason I talk about Cheez-Its is because it's harmless. Everybody giggles about it. I say Cheez-Its, and you're like, yeah. And you send me the pictures at the store of a whole pallet full of Cheez-Its. Hey, Pastor, what do you think? Okay. Well, what if I had a lust problem? Are you going to send me pictures of your naked wife? Who's going to giggle about that one? Anybody going to laugh on that one? Hey, let's put it up on the screens at church. This is what Billy Bob shot me because he knew, I had a lust problem, so, he figured he'd help me out. All of a sudden, it's not so funny anymore. See, but those are the kind of sins that when we talk about in church, we're like, all they talk about is sin. We're not going to go there. I want to go to a church that makes me feel good. It keeps me in the crazy ward pretending. See, if I exchange Cheez-Its for a porn issue, a lust issue, a fantasy issue, a fear issue, an anger issue, I could just envy. Of course, none of us ever deal with envy in here. What are they doing with the new car? We sin sometimes in the parking lot before we come in. What did they get that car for? Are they doing something illegal? And that envy monster just starts taking chunks of our soul, right? And we're enslaved to it. And that we don't giggle about it. We don't laugh about it. Why? We keep it hidden because why? We're slaves. And slaves have masters. We are not slaves because we do bad things. That doesn't make us a slave. We do bad things because we're already a slave to sin. It just reveals that we have a master. Romans 6, Paul, the same writer of Philippians, he says, don't you know that if you offer yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one that you obey? Either of sin, leading to death, or of obedience, leading to righteousness. We can be a slave to sin, and it will make us hide, or we will be a slave to obedience, leading to righteousness. Now, this is key, Christians. Church, if we modify our behavior, if we change without surrendering, it just deepens the slavery. If I can defeat Cheez-Its without ever going to God about it, you know what it does? It makes me a self-righteous, hard-to-be-around person. Because I have gotten back on the throne, and I've defeated Cheez-Its through my own discipline and hard effort. And that's the deepest slavery of all. Because we can't escape the ward on our own. Jesus reserved his harshest words for those that used piety and spirituality, supposed spirituality, as a cloak to cover up all of their self-righteousness, which actually was wickedness in a religious costume. Who were they? They were the Pharisees. Now, if you want to get somebody mad in church today, just call them a Pharisee. No, you're a Pharisee. I mean, you might have a fist fight in the lobby if you call somebody a Pharisee. But in Jesus' day, if you called somebody a Pharisee, they'd say, thank you. In fact, here's a conversation in a Jewish family. Billy, why can't you be like the Pharisees kid down the street? They don't have to constantly. See, they were the standard. That's who they were. They were the standard. They were who the parents wanted their children to grow up to be. Oh, I hope they grow up and are in that group, because that's the group, man. I mean, they are the group. Here's what Jesus said about the Pharisees. Matthew 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, pretenders. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence and Cheez-Its. Oh, no. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, so the outside of it may also become clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, you pretenders. You're like whitewashed tombs, which appear beautiful on the outside, but inside you're full of dead men's bones and every impurity. In the same way, on the outside, you seem to be righteous to people, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. When I was a kid growing up in church, my family originally was from the South, and then they ended up here in the North in Yankee land. And some of you still, you hate the fact that you're a Yankee, Yao. You're still, I mean, you know, at 10 years old, you moved from West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, someplace down there, but still you call yourself a Southerner. You've been here 70 years. You're a Yankee. Get over it. Okay, and you go back down. I know what you do. You go visit your relatives, and for 2 weeks you get to say y'all and all that kind of stuff. And then you come back up here and you go back to saying you guys. You do it. Everybody does it. You're what? You're a Northern Pharisee. Right? You're pretending. You're not a true Southerner. You live with sidewalks, for crying out loud. You haven't milked a cow in decades. You know? You haven't done any of that. But we hold on to those things, don't we? So when my family moved up north, my father, I remember listening to these conversations in my house. Because down south, when the church did stuff, like they would go swimming. And there was no such thing in the South as mixed bathing. Say, they took baths together? That's what I thought. No, that's swimming. No mixed swimming. The men and the women couldn't swim in the same area. I don't know what they did in water, but they couldn't swim in the water at the same time. The girls had to go and then get out. Then the men had to go and get out. And that was a tenet of the church. I mean, it was, and up north, when my parents moved up here, it was like they'd go to some activity, the youth, and the whole youth group would be in the pool at the same time, and they're like, oh no, the men and the women, they're swimming together in the pool. Oh no. That's horrible. But up here, they had a different set of rules, different set of outside rules. See, down there, you walk out of church, and when you walked out of the doors of church, you walked through a haze of smoke. And people going, because they were chewing tobacco, they were pipe smoking tobacco, they were smoking cigarette tobacco, they were doing everything they could with tobacco. Because why? They grew it. They grew it on their farms. They called it the cash crop. They made a lot of money growing tobacco. So they grow corn and other stuff to feed their animals. They grow tobacco to put money in the bank. So it's kind of hard to preach in a church with a bunch of tobacco growers that, you know what? Tobacco kills people. We should probably grow a conscience about this and stop doing it. Now, I would have a very short shelf life if I preached that down south. Amen? I'd have about the same shelf life as I would in this church saying, I can buy whatever kind of car I want to. I can drive a Toyota. Get out of my face. I can drive a Nissan. I can drive a Honda. Leave me alone. And you would say, I don't know if we like that pastor anymore. Because why? Our livelihood depends on it. And we found out in short order that tobacco thing, even though there's a little bit of a moral equivalent there about it does kill people, that whole cancer thing, but the whole mixed bathing and what kind of car you drive and all that. In fact, some of you right now, instead of paying attention to what we're talking, you're worried about whether or not I have a tie on right now. You're thinking about it. And that's going to be the subject matter of your lunch discussion instead of Philippians 2:7. You know why? Talking about whether pastor, you say, why didn't you wear a tie, pastor? Can you answer that? Yeah, to give everybody over 50 something to talk about today. In fact, they could talk about it all week, and they probably will. Why? That's how small our world has become. A small world. A small mindset. We're just like, oh no, the Pharisees. We'll have long conversations about what I'm wearing. We'll have long conversations about mixed bathing, or, oh man, if I, was chewing today, oh, we'd have that, oh man, but I don't have any conversations about who's sitting on the throne of my life. Who's really the Cheez-It king? See, we're not just talking about outward sins, because those are easy. It's easy. But the most insidious sin is the inward pride of self-righteousness. It's hard to get that weed out. Matthew, the 6th chapter, Jesus goes on, he says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward for your Father in heaven. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be applauded by people. I assure you, they've already gotten their reward. Whenever you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, because they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners. In order to be seen by people, I assure you, they've already gotten their reward. Whenever you fast, don't be sad-faced like the hypocrites, for they make their faces unattractive, so that fasting is obvious to people. I assure you, they've already got their reward. Don't do the I can't walk down the Cheez-It aisle face when you're fasting. Oh. And see, when I don't get the Cheez-Its, there's this thing in me that's so sad. Why? Because I'm not righteous yet. And that proves it. It proves it. I haven't eaten a Cheez-It. Honest. That doesn't mean I'm righteous. I got that inward thing. That scary inward thing is, yeah, I haven't had a Cheez-It. Therefore, I'm Cheez-It-less. No. I still want them. I still want them. I just haven't given in yet. See, Jesus is the only one that can fix that wanter thing. That thing inside that says, yeah, I know, but I want it. I want what's not good for me. He's the only one that can do that. I can't do that with behavior modification. In fact, when I do change outwardly, without it being God, then I become one of these Pharisees, and they're the hardest people in the world to deal with. Why? Because you can't convince them they're wrong. So Jesus, this necessitated Jesus busting in from another place, from heaven. And it says he emptied himself of his rightful place, and he became like a slave. He came like a slave and became in the likeness of sinful man. Now, likeness isn't sameness. I'm talking about Cheez-Its. And some of you are like, the Cheez-It thing isn't my deal, But when I start talking about Lay's potato chips, you might have another issue. Now, see, there's a big difference between Lay's potato chips, which I love, and Cheez-Its, which I also love. They look different. Potato chips, Lay's, Frito-Lay, I'm talking plain. Frito-Lay, just plain Jane, fresh out of the bag. Cheez-Its come in a box. Potato chips come in a bag. They smell different. Potato chips do not have that cheesy goodness of Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its don't have that wrapped. How about when the potato chips, it's not flat, but it's doubled over. When it's doubled over, I don't know, but that makes it better. It has this a little bit more snap. I don't know, but they're alike, but they're not the same, are they? No, but if you go to the side of the box and read the ingredients, it's pretty alike. It's a bunch of carbohydrates and sodium. That's what it is. One has some cheesy stuff flavoring, which is all fake, and the other one doesn't. And that's about it. It's both processed food. And so you look at those side panels and you're like, they're kind of similar, but they're not totally the same. Jesus looked just like us. And that's what tripped people up. They kept looking at this guy and saying, you look just like us. How can you be the Messiah? Oh, but he inside, he wasn't anything like us. Was he? See, when he was on the cross, bearing the sin of mankind, they walked by and they were mocking him. Yeah, we knew it. We knew you weren't the guy. If you were the guy, you could do this, you could do that. Like, ask him to do another miracle, like the 5,000 weren't enough. And then they mocked him and jeered him. Oh, why don't you call the angels? Why don't you do this and that? And he said, if he were me, I'm taking names. And I'm going to remember every one of you. See, that's what I would think. I'm doing this for you, and you mock me, you're going on my list. That's what I would do. Anybody else? What I wouldn't do is what Jesus did. See, he looked like us, but he wasn't anything like us. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I am so far from that. Anybody else? That's not me. I'd have the list. I'd be carving it into the cross. Yeah, I remember. I carved it right there, and now I'm in charge, and you're gonna be crispy. Yeah. Only you're not gonna die. You're just gonna stay crispy. But see, Jesus didn't come to condemn. He took on that similarity and to redeem and purchase what we couldn't do for ourselves. Yeah, I have no ability to get righteousness and to break out of the psych ward. I have no ability. Because why? Romans 5:12 says, just as sin entered the world through one man, when Adam sat on that chair, sin came into the world and death through sin. And in this way, death spread to all men because we've all sinned. We know that story. We know what happened. We know what ruined everything. But Paul later says in Romans 5:19, but just as through one man disobedience, many were made sinners through Adam's disobedience, now also through one man's obedience, the obedience of Christ, humbling himself and going to the cross, that many men will be made righteous. Just like when Adam blew it, what Jesus did when he emptied himself and became sin's payment, many will be made righteous. But the dangerous thing is that any self-effort to measure up is an act of sinful defiance to the cross of Jesus Christ. If I decide, okay, Jesus died for me. All right, I'm a sinner. I get it. I'm deserving of death and hell. I get that. And so what should I do? I'm going to try harder. No, that's the trap. That's what keeps us in the psych ward. Or how about this one? I swear on my life I will never eat another Cheez-It. Okay. That just means you didn't eat another Cheez-It. How about all the Cheez-Its I ate up to date? I'm not going to feel the effects of those? Yes, I will. Yes, I will. All the sin. If we didn't sin from this moment forward, that would not make us righteous. When we sin one time, we fail the whole law. We're guilty. It's like arguing with the cancer doctor. The doctor comes and says, hey, you got cancer. Okay, well, I get that, but can you just do something about the nausea and hair loss and then I'm okay? You're kidding me, right? Don't you want the medicine to cure the cancer? Nah, it's the nausea and the hair loss that's really bugging me. So if you can do that, then, we'll be all right. The doctor will look at you and say, you're crazy. Don't you want the cure? Who cares about the nausea? Who cares about what it will take in order to put Christ rightfully on the throne of our life? Who cares what it will take? Who cares what we have to get rid of? He's the only cure. He's the only cure. Now, see how tricky that self-righteousness is? In closing, man, there was a guy in Scripture, and he's the guy, we still name our sons after him. He's the guy that everybody wanted to be. His name was David. And this guy he wrote poetry, songs. He could play music. He was a warrior. When all the armies of Israel, including Saul, were scared of Goliath, this little shepherd boy walked up, picked up some stones, said, he's an easy target. Bing, cut off his head. Great victory. I mean, he was just this mighty warrior. He became king of Israel. Israel just flourished under his command. He was this man of honor and integrity. His word was his bond. He was Israel's hero. He had a Cheez-It moment. He had a Cheez-It moment. His Cheez-Its were called Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. Only it didn't just start on that porch. It started well before then. He was on that porch because he had been tasting the Cheez-Its already. He knew what happened at that time of day out on his porch. He knew that the women in the cool of the night went up to the rooftops to bathe. He was up there for a reason. He wasn't like, oh, what was that? He was like, oh, here she comes. Now, who's that babylicious one? Oh, that's Uriah's wife. Get her for me. Get your own box. And he took her. He had plenty of wives, but he wanted that one. And it was against everything that was in his character, proving that David, just like us, is a sinner in need of the grace of God. Amen. And then she came to him with the news, hey, Dave, my husband's out on the battlefield, and I'm pregnant. Oh, man. And the National Enquirer is parked outside my house. I can't go anywhere without the paparazzi. I mean, oh, what are we going to do? He said, oh, I got this, honey. So he calls Uriah back from the battlefield. He says, Uriah, you're doing such a good job. Go have some R&R with your wife. You know, Uriah for months has been around a bunch of smelly soldiers out of the battlefield, away from home. It's like, go home, get cleaned up, and it's like, yeah. And so in the middle of the night, the guards come to David at the palace. They said, David, what? And Uriah, he's sleeping at the steps of the palace. He won't go home. And David goes out there and says, Uriah, what are you doing, man? Go home. He's like, I can't go home and enjoy the benefit of my wife when these other men are risking their life for our nation. David says, I hate that about you, man. That's that integrity that David used to have, remember? And so he says, well, come on in here. And he opens up the liquor cabinet. And he gets Uriah stoned. Now, go home to your wife. All right, man. He shuts the palace doors, and he won't. He sleeps off as drunk right there on the steps of the palace. Even drunk, his integrity wouldn't fail. So David sends out instructions to Joab, the general, gives them to Uriah and says, deliver these to Joab, go back to the front. And Uriah carried his execution orders to Joab. And in those orders, David wrote, put him in the front, withdraw protection, and let the enemy kill him. And he killed a man in cold blood, and he used the Philistine army to do it in order to cover his sin. That is an accurate picture of us sitting on the throne of our life. We make a mess of it, do we not? An absolute mess of it. The only good decision that we make in our life is when we're not on the throne and we're like, we don't deserve this, God. We don't deserve this. Please, will you? And put him in his rightful place as ruler of our life. Then good things happen. So David, it's going to look like the good guy, huh? He brings this pregnant woman into his harem to look after her because her husband died on the battlefield. Oh, you could hear the people talking. Oh, David's such a good king. Uriah, it was so sad he died. And David took him in. He's such a good king. Pfft. Wow. Nathan knew the truth. He was the prophet. Nathan comes to him, tells him a story, and David says, oh, I hate that. And in the story, he says, but you're the guy. And he finally breaks. He has that moment where he recognizes he's trying to measure up on his own. He's sitting on the throne of his life, and he's ruined everything. Now, let me ask you something. Let's be honest. Can he undead Uriah? Can he make him alive again? Can he impregnate Bathsheba? Can he unsleep with her? Can he undo the mess that is made? He has no capability to fix any of it. It's etched in stone now. So just die and be done with it. No, this is where we live. This is the crazy ward. This is where we live. What are we going to do with it? Here's what he did in Psalm 51. He cries out to God. He goes into private chambers and he cries out to God and he says, you do not want a sacrifice, or else I would give it. You're not pleased with a burnt offering. There's nothing I can go to the temple and do to erase this. Then he goes on to say, the sacrifice pleasing to God is a broken spirit. God, you will not despise a broken and a humbled heart. Wow. See, church, this is the thing. We can't pose our way to spirituality. But the good news is this. We don't have to. Amen? I don't have to pretend. Jesus did it all for me. Before David was born, God knew what he was going to do, And he knew he was going to lay all of his sins on his son Jesus on the cross. He knew that. That is why the throne of my life belongs only to one person, and that's Jesus Christ. And as I humble myself and say, you're right, you're the only one, then he has a chance to put his truth in me and change my heart from wanting things that are absolutely disastrous for me, to change my wanter on the inside. I know as we look at these messages, you're like, just give me 3 steps so I can do this and get back on to business. No, it's not that easy. It's a lifetime work of letting the mind of Christ become our mind. It's a daily humbling brokenness. But the minute that we start thinking we're something, we've lost it. And we went right back to sitting on the throne of our life. Oh no, it's that easy? Right. It's that easy. It's that easy. But it's also that easy to see it so that we can stay broken hundreds of times a day if we need to. Oh, that's me. I'm doing it. I'm trying to take control of it again. I'm trying to do this. That self-righteousness, it's so easy to spot if we allow the truth of God to be our measuring stick. Yeah. So who's on your throne today? Is there some people that need to get off there? Is Jesus on the throne? It's a good question. Let's stand to our feet with heads bowed and eyes closed.